Ne-am întors cu ambasadorul Croației la București despre Uniunea Europeană. Am discutat despre faptul că este cel mai nou membru și a apărut și a intrat în aceste vremuri foarte grele pentru Uniune, într-o perioadă foarte grea, dar curajul și ambiția și modul pozitiv în care domnul ambasador pune problema îmi dă și mie speranțe. Mr. Ambassador, I would like to move a little bit the subject and to speak a little bit about Croatia and the time, because the Romanians will never forget that. It's a moment which, I mean, the world will never forget that. But it was an important moment when Yugoslavia disappeared. And I want to ask you, how was that? How did you feel that process? How would you describe that process? Why was created, and why was splitted, and why was again created, and why was again splitted?
That's you drive me back to this essential question of the what we was facing 25 years ago. Obviously, there was no common force or common denominators which then could kept all those 6 countries together. Not reminded that everything collapsed 10 years before the dissolution of Yugoslavia. Tito dies.
Yes.
It was a last day of Communist Party, and by the way, there was not anything what could put all those 6 countries together. By the way, you remind me now on a very interesting situation what I remember early 80s, so 10 years before everything starts. So it was a year after Tito died. I was reading in a Croatian press a prediction of the CIA. I'm talking about 1981, that Yugoslavia will collapse in 10 years.
Really?
So for me it was...
Where did you read that?
I remember it was a Croatian Večernji list, and
Wow.
it was probably they passed through analysis, or I cannot remember exactly, but for me it was then something like unbelievable that it will happen in 10 years. And it happens, and it happens in a way that, you know, we cannot, how to say, all the leaders then start to try to reorganize a common state and try to find a common denominator, but it was too late. And unfortunately, in the same time, you have a few processes which starts. It was end of the communism, socialism. It was end of the
Yes.
so-called directed economy. It was so many transition in the same period.
Yes.
And it was transition from the one-party system to multi-party system, and it was so many, so many processes in the same time that simply all those countries cannot affect and cannot swallow those processes on the same level. Unfortunately, we are facing now the same problem, that all those countries are not on the same level of European integration process.
Sure.
And you see that some countries still have other type of the problems what still they cannot solve it. So we decided then to start process of building our own country. We faced a referendum, and unfortunately then starts war. And it was not a pleasant experience. I'm talking as a war veteran. War is something really, I mean...
You're part of the war?
I mean, look, I was mobilized as a normal citizen of Croatia, and
How old was you at that
it was 1991. Then I was 29.
Wow.
Look.
And all the young people, or?
No, it was
Asking
how
for-
to say. It was probably they have some kind of the logic, whom they were invited. They mobilized, and by the way, I was mobilized, and I was just 20 kilometers south from the Zagreb, and it was a front. So it was how to say, a pretty bad experience for the country. But then it is a kind of the experience then how to say, believes in your country. And you know, war
Yes.
War returns you to the basic
trust,
values
yeah.
as love, family, you know. So it's experience. But then when you create a country from the war, then you respect it, and then you it's how to say, if we could skip it, rather to skip this experience, we have it and we respect it, and now we have it. And try what is very important through the war, what we somehow in the former Yugoslavia missed from the Second World War. When you finish the war, it's very important to say, dot, it's over, let's turn to the future. So maybe to skip this story, and then you, after the we have our own country, then it was two main ideas: to move the country toward Europe, European Union, and NATO, to make a security, economy, and all other frames for a good life of every citizen.
Mr. Ambassador, you mentioned now something very deep, very deep. I will make a comparison, but maybe it's not really the same. You learn to love your re-love your country again in these difficult times, as we will probably, we and others will re-love democracy when we are about to lose it. How many people died in Croatia in the war?
So direct casualties of the war, it's around 11,000.
11,000.
But then, in comparing with the war in Bosnia and Herzegovina, it's a completely different. In Bosnia and Herzegovina, war was really terrible. But then you have a post-war effect, and we have, for example, 2,500 suicides of the Croatian veterans from the war. So you cannot avoid that this is also casualties of the war. So you know, war, it's terrible experience. And
why they committed suicide? Because of the experience?
It's very difficult to say.
I don't want to go into sensitive aspects, but you are you yourself a soldier, and I'm trying to understand. I mean, because they were fighting with, until then they were their own. It was one nation, or it was because they just were not. They couldn't stand to the idea that they killed other people. I don't.
It was. I mean, is it appropriate to say it? It is a kind of the old-fashioned idea of the fight for the national state and a clear territory with one nation. It was something what disappeared a century ago, and this was how to say, this was a kind of the basic idea. And when you have a, how to say, country in which is on a edge of different cultures, different nations, religions, then you cannot draw the clear lines.
No, you can't.
And it's a pure idea to have a national country in a way that just one nation is living there. It's not modern idea. And it's on the contrary of basic European idea to have a movement, cultures, ideas, people. I mean,
Mr. Ambassador, I'm sorry for insisting with these questions.
Go ahead.
I can understand it's not easy for you to remember that such an experience, but I'm doing this, and we had a South African ambassador, which I love it very much. She was also passing experiences in her country for fighting for liberty and freedom, for equality, let's say. Why? Because I don't want to scare the people, but if they don't understand, if they don't recall, it's easy to say, oh, we start the war, we do. You know, it's very easy to lose your minds and to take for granted everything. We need to look to recent events, because the documentaries on Discovery, to look on what happened in the Second World War, First World War, it's almost entertainment now, you know. And we need to remind them that not so far beyond 20 years ago, not so far here, very close to Romania, very in the region, we had people dying because of stupid reasons, because they couldn't, the leaders couldn't make an understanding in peace. And 11,000 Croatians died, and many other Bosniak people died. because in Bosnia was a terrible, terrible disaster there, and we'll wait for their ambassador to come and talk to us. I will not insist on this aspect, but it was important for the people to understand and to see the danger and the bad aspects which are appearing after a war, the dramas and so on. But you also presented the positive aspects, the unity of the people and so on. Now,
just refer to this.
Please.
I could tell you because I was among the first diplomats after the war who opened the diplomatic mission of Republic of Croatia in Belgrade.
Oh, so that's good.
So how to say?
Yes.
I know, it's very important as soon as possible to start. How to say? Rehealing, reconciliation.
How did you feel at that moment?
Look, it's when you have a problem like this one, it's a kind of the. Of course, you respect basic values,
Yes.
but it's a question of the economization and energy. As much as you spend the energy with the country for how to say explanation and trying to find a solution for the problem from the past, you are losing your energy and your time for the future. And somehow we realize that important for us is very important to keep good relations with Serbia. So we very soon after the liberation of the country, we signed a Treaty of Normalization relations with Serbia, established diplomatic relations, and what is very important after that, to try to manage that people could communicate, that ideas, people, money, traffic, tourism, everything starts as it was before, and that you reduce this time of the pollution after the war as much as possible. So that's, I think, now when we are looking on these events 25 years ago, for me it's far past.
Okay.
And
what about the Croatian people? I mean, how do they feel about these events now? Did they manage to pass over?
Look, we are still trying to, how to say, first in a negotiation process with the European Union for entry in the European Union, there was some chapters which was directly involved with the consequences of the war. Resolving problem of the refugees, missing persons, then you have a problem, borders, succession of the former country. Then one of the important conditions was establishing good relations with the neighbors.
Yes, absolutely, of course.
So that, and then what was very difficult for us is a Hague Tribunal. And we have some generals, a few of generals of the Croatian army, which was later released, but it was a kind of the, you cannot skip the feeling of the humiliation of that. But in the end, it was important to solve this problem either in a judiciary, and then move aside and try to shift the country for the future. And that's how we, by the way, that's a basic idea what we try to, when we are trying to explain our relations, an idea of our relations with the neighbors. It's solve the problem of the past and focus on a future. For most of the countries, I would say for all countries of our region, idea of joining the European Union is a basic value. So then to help them to finish negotiations, and by the way, that's when you mentioned from the beginning of this discussion that there is a merging of the countries in Scandinavia on the North Baltic V4. As much as we, as soon as possible, we could kind of have a nivelization of all the countries concerning the European Union and NATO. Then we can have a club of the gathering of the, or a kind of the countries members of European Union with one voice, for example. And that's something what is very obvious what is your president doing and our Madam President is doing, because obviously you have a few members of the European Union, Bulgaria, Romania, Slovenia, Croatia, if you're looking on the NATO, then Albania, we
Poland as well.
Yeah, of course, but we need to have our club, you know, with our ideas, like a kind of the, you know, Scandinavization of, you know, common, and despite the fact that you have countries in the north which are not a member of the NATO and European Union.
Absolutely.
So, and that's now when we are looking at our relations with neighbors, let's try to
see the common interest.
Yeah, and now to see how we'll look in 10 years. when all the countries in the region will be member, not 10, maybe 20, I don't know. When all the countries will be member of the European Union, NATO, okay, NATO, Serbia, maybe less. But Schengen, now it doesn't look as we would like to see concerning the problems what we are facing, but
True.
in the next 10, 20 years we will definitely have a different situation.
That's true. Mr. Ambassador, passing this difficult moment for your people and for your country and for yourself, I'm looking to the map and I notice that Croatia is, of course, as I was there, I could see that you have a big open to the sea, Adriatic Sea, a wonderful, very beautiful sea, indeed with less beaches than Romania. You know, the sand there is 10 centimeters, and then you enter the water. But very, very beautiful water. And I'm talking this because you're talking about neighbors, and I started with the easy one, with the sea. Then, of course, you have Hungary, and what about Slovenia? Do you still have debate over the border?
Yes, but how to say, it's a problem with the Slovenia, because at the end, technically speaking, solving of the border is a matter of the technical decision if you have rules and regulations and respecting international law. Unfortunately, there is always political dimension of the border. So we try to find the common methodology how to finally define the border on a. It's basically the main problem of the borders of former Yugoslavia. I'm talking about internal borders between republics, that you had the borders on the land, but you never had the borders on a sea.
I understand what you're
And unfortunately or fortunately, four borders on a sea is also borders what is Croatia keeping. If you see the map, you will see one border with on a sea with Montenegro, one with Slovenia, and two with Bosnia and Herzegovina. So we try to find a solution according to UN Convention law on the sea, and you know, if you look at the similar problems in Europe, you will be surprised how many problems and how
I agree.
How long, for example, Norway or Russia or Germany and Netherlands,
even Sweden with Finland, but I understand very well the
even
situation.
With my last experience serving in Vilnius, Lithuania, it's, for example, still not finally solved the problem between Lithuania and Latvia.
Ah, yes, yes.
And during my mandate, they finally reached agreement on a border between Sweden and Lithuania on a sea. So it's for some, I would say, issues you need time.
Yes, and here you mentioned a very important point that both you and Slovenia wanted to have access to the sea. And Slovenia has a very little access, but the sea is crucial.
Yeah, but there is how to say, you have to make a decision with the, how to say, national border and the traffic on the sea. You are obliged to allow traffic on the sea for the ships. It's a kind of the international law. It's not it's a pure fact on a line and a state territory, and you know, it's implication. It's on a national level, because when you're talking about the state land, it's a matter of the high policy, parliamentary decision, government. So it's complicated, and probably we need more time for that. And for example, you will be surprised that how I understand a few years the only border between former Yugoslav republics and autonomous provinces which is treated till the end, I mean ratified on the both sides, is border between Kosovo and Montenegro. Sorry, Kosovo and Macedonia.
Is the only.
Only one. Still all others, for example, if you compare other borders, we signed a treaty on a border between Bosnia and Croatia, but we never ratified on both sides.
Really?
Yes.
Your parliament didn't yet
no,
approve
it's you know, it was a changing of the government, then still open question border on the sea. So it's a pretty, how to say, it's a question of, it's not easy. You can really find a moment which will be acceptable for both sides with the respecting of
No,
the
we
rules.
had our own problem with Ukraine about 10 years ago,
We were
if you
following
remember.
this case carefully.
Sorry?
We were following this case carefully.
It was not easy. Well, it was quite a negotiation there. So I understand what you mean by
but
that.
your experience definitely guide us to the fact that at the end we will need the help from the third side. Arbitrage, court,
Absolutely.
international court, or some solution.
How is now the relation with the Bosniak people? I'm not speaking now about the authorities. How are the two people, Croatian and the Bosniak people, relating?
Look, relations are normal. People are traveling. There is a business there. The problem with the Bosnia and Herzegovina, it's another type of the problem, because you will see very often, even in the Bosnian media, fact that Dayton Agreement finished the war. But Dayton Agreement is very complicated structure for functioning of the normal country. Our idea with Bosnia and Herzegovina is, as soon as possible, in negotiation process with EU, accepting EU values, and of course, we are talking about the third country. We as a Croatia, in favor of the fact that all three constitutional people find their solution acceptable for all three of them, without influence from the outside. Of course, there is still, how to say, international mechanism functioning inside of the Bosnia and Herzegovina. But we, as a first neighbor, we try to play a constructive role.
Well, that is very important. That is very important, because I also believe that the only possibility to clear everything is to have Bosnia and Herzegovina in the EU, or have all the former Yugoslavian republics in the EU. Then is the normality can come from itself. Mr. Ambassador, we'll take another short break of commercials, and we'll talk more about Croatia, because I want to tell our viewers, and this is important, also why they should go, why they should visit, to tell more than about this unfortunate recent history which needs to be known, about EU, about political games. The people needs also to know more about the country. You know, as citizens, they need to know what is surround them, because Croatia is not so far from Romania. So, okay, publicitate.